All right, I am Marcus Blake with That Nerd Show, and we are here with director Tony Shaff of the documentary 44 Pages, which is about the Highlights magazine. So we are That Nerd Show, and we've got mothers who write for us with kids who have introduced this to their kids. We've all grown up with it. I feel like Highlights magazine is like a staple of our society when you're a child, much like Sesame Street, Star Wars, and all that. So, how did this project come to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just seeing kids in the world get a subscription to this magazine and they drop their iPads and pick up a print magazine. I was sort of shocked that actually was happening, that the kids were trading in their shiny screen for paper. So I started looking into it. I hadn't looked at it for 30 years. I'm sure like most adults, we haven't seen the magazine in so long, but we know of it as being like this pop culture phenomenon. It's just, and everyone remembers it from their childhood. I'd say 95% of people.
Well, when you become an adult, until you have kids, you don't really think about Highlights until you're introducing it, and I think that's the beauty of it, especially when you're dealing with multiple generations. I will admit that I'd forgotten that it was 70 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, it's surprising that it's been around for 70 years, but it started in 46, and it's been family owned and operated for that whole time, and there's no advertisement in it. There's all this stuff that like they're kind of bucking the system, so it's interesting that's the way that stayed afloat.
Well, but I love the idea that it hasn't compromised in 70 years. It is what it is, and that's what we love about it.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like nothing's broke about it, so they don't need to really go in and try to make major improvements. There's been something, when I picked it up again after 30 years, I was kind of shocked that it was, still very familiar to me. I felt like it was something that I could have picked up, 30 years ago. It felt like the same magazine. So, and I'm really interested in in technology and how it's sort of affecting the way we communicate. My last film was about telephone hotlines and, whether it's suicide or sex or psychics, and that film, which is on VOD now, and it's out in the world, but it was all about the death of telephone communication. People don't want to have a conversation anymore.
Right.
So this is more about print and what's going on with print, and is there still a yearning for people to have that tactile?
Well, I think this is one of those magazines that, yes, because of everything that they put into it, the uniqueness of what they put into it. While it has changed over 70 years, a lot hasn't really changed. So, there's still the same stuff in it that I see that my mother saw when she had it as a child. So, what's your favorite thing about Highlights? What?
My favorite topics in it? I don't know. I think I like puzzle. I'm a big puzzle person, so the puzzles in there are great. But also being a documentarian, I think the nonfiction stuff, there's something called What a Pro Knows, and every month they put a feature about a career path for kids, which I think is awesome. It's kind of cool for a kid to be able to say, one day I want to be a sculptor, or I want to be, someone who writes books in Braille, even. So it's a very there's a lot of really cool topics in it.
One of the things I was glad that you kind of tackled was the fact that they still answer every letter that they get sent into them, and that a lot of kids, that sometimes that's the safest place where they can talk about what's going on than with grown-ups, and they will answer and kind of steer them in the right direction.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit like a confessional for kids. They get a chance to write an adult, and they know that someone's going to respond to them. And I think that some of their deepest, darkest secrets as kids that come to the office. So yeah, it's really fascinating. They get 3,000 a year, so they get all these responses. But yeah, no, it's. Are you going to talk to these people? I don't know. These seem like the kid stars.
Well, it's for the film Into the Who Knows, which you should see. And I think that, by the way, 44 pages Into the Who Knows would be two great movies to put together.
Oh, cool.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, great.
So, I'm just saying.
I'll have to check it out.
But yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying about that. It's just, I think that's the great thing about Highlights. We're in doing a documentary. Have they off camera, have they talked about what they hope their future still is, or where they any plans to change? Or
They still feel very strongly that they're doing really well. I mean, they've kept a pretty consistent level of subscriptions. I mean, they're looking at other things, like they are looking at apps, they are looking at digital. So, I mean, they obviously have a better answer than I do, but from my documenting, it seems like things are going really well for them. It seems like it's strong and that there is a future for print media. So, yeah. It's funny, I've been hearing you ask people, like, what's your favorite superpower?
Oh, yes, we're going to get to our nerdy question here at That Nerd Show. Yes, we do a nerdy question at the end of all of our interviews, and it changes from year to year. So this year it is, if you could be a superhero or a supervillain, what would your superpower be and why?
Oh, interesting. Okay. I mean, I think because I'm a documentarian, I'm sort of like a voyeur. I think that the ability to be invisible would be really great. Like kind of not even fly on the wall, just like me with the camera invisible, documenting and getting a chance to see people at their most natural states. Not in a creepy way, but in a good way, in a positive way. So, invisible.
No, I completely understand. There's a lot that you could get done when you're invisible and catch things that are good. So, especially the people that don't tweet as much as like our president and says stupid stuff. But, plus.
Like the that nerd show is great because I think that there's a lot of nerds that read highlights. There's nothing wrong with being a nerd. Like these kids are like,
no,
they're smart, they're learning about science, they love math, they kind of geek out on like these different types of dinosaurs, and I think that's what's awesome.
Well, and that's one of the things that we love about at That Nerd Show is, look, we're all in our 30s, we're grown men, we're nerdy, we didn't change. It's okay. It's always been popular with us. So, but the other side of it is we have a category called the Science Corner where we actually we have bloggers that write science articles. We talk about really educational things, and also talk about, can they really do this in a superhero movie? What's the physics behind it?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But getting back to highlights, that you talk about the educational standpoint of here's the different things that you can do that are cool. Stick with it. Don't worry about what other people are thinking. So.
I think that the idea of having a magazine that is pretty open to exploring some more complicated subjects, but bring it, like kind of boiling it down so that a child can understand it. And then as they get older, they can learn more and more about those things. But I mean, education's one thing, but making education fun is another. And I think that's what they really excel at. So.
Well, like I said, it was a great documentary, brought back a lot.